there's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bod Father.
Man, this stuff rocks.
Hi, this is Ken Mary from Fifth Angel, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour. Check it out.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Hour, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I am your host, John the Bod, aka the Bod Father, and as always, I'm bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews. Today, it's an honor and a huge privilege to welcome Ken Mary of Fifth Angel, and Fifth Angel has released their fourth album, When Angels Kill, via Nuclear Blast Records, and When Angels Kill is a double concept record similar to the likes of Halloween's Keeper of the Seven Keys, Pink Floyd's The Wall, and like Queensryche's Operation Line Crime. Also check out singles When Angels Kill and We Are Immortal. And dude, We Are Immortal is just one badass song you can listen to over and over and over. So welcome to the podcast, Ken. How you doing?
Thank you so much, Bod Father.
Folks, if you don't know who Ken is in the music world, you are living under a rock, because I say this about Johnny Kelly, the well-traveled Johnny Kelly, as I say, because he's drummed for everybody. Just like Ken, he's drummed for many bands, and he was a writer on over 35 albums that combined have sold over 5 million copies worldwide. Man, when you see that, what goes through your mind? Like, I can't believe I'm part of this, or just, this is nothing.
Well, it's what goes through your mind? I mean, the thing that goes through my mind is how messed up the music business is now compared to, what it was in the past. In the past, you could actually make money from your art. You would create a product like a CD or an album, and you would put it out and you would get revenue from it. And nowadays it's like everything's pretty much free on streaming. So that's what goes through my mind. I go, well, yeah, I sold 5 million copies, which sounds like an astronomical amount of music now. I mean, now it sounds like an insane amount, but I kind of look at it and go, what's going to happen for artists in the future? I don't know. I mean, I don't think we're going to see the days where you can necessarily do that anymore.
And now we're in the days where, going to a club and playing a show and hopefully a record producer there is now out of the question, because, it's all like you said, throw it up on YouTube or Spotify or something, and hopefully somebody hears you that says, oh, this band needs to be out on tour right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think YouTube is now where most people would get discovered, whereas back in the day, I mean, years and years ago, I mean, that process really hasn't changed all that much. I mean, when you think about it, if you think about like the 60s or something, 70s, sometimes a producer would see a band in a club and go like, oh, they have great music, and sign them. But in the 80s, when Fifth Angel started, we put out an independent record and it started doing very well. And it was getting, higher chart action than a lot of major label product. And so it was, an independent release that took off. And then we ended up getting signed by Epic Records, who was the biggest record company in the world at the time. Mm-hmm. And, so I guess my point is, the process is still the same. Like if you look at if all of a sudden your video on YouTube with your band started getting 5 million, 6 million views or something, you'd probably start getting calls from record companies. So it's just about, rising to the top in whatever mode is the current mode of operation. Now it's YouTube and Spotify. So if you have a band that's taking off on Spotify or YouTube, and chances are you're probably going to be getting some phone calls.
All right, Ken. So here's my question to a veteran musician like yourself. For these youngins, as I call them, these young bands that are coming up, should they take advantage of this digital world that we're in, like YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, all this, and Spotify? Should they take advantage of that and just go for it?
I think they have to. I mean, I think that's really where you're going to win, is in the digital war. And if you're an independent band and you're a young band and you really want to do something, I would probably almost focus exclusively on your campaigning on YouTube and TikTok and social media, because I think that's, I mean, there are independent bands that I know of. I won't mention them, but there's some bands from Phoenix that are getting millions and millions of views on YouTube and selling product on their own. I mean, they're making a pretty good size impact without a record company at all, and they're keeping all the revenue. And I kind of look at that and go, that may be the model for the future, possibly.
Yeah, for sure. In 2010, Fifth Angel headlined the Keep It True Music Festival in Germany. The reception was incredible for you guys, and with that sold out crowd singing the lyrics, every song that you guys played, they sung along with it. How important was that for the band to create more music and to say, hey, we need to continue and do something else now?
Well, I think it was extremely important. I mean, we really sort of noticed that, wow, our impact in Europe may have been much bigger than what we thought, especially compared to the United States. So, we definitely saw that as a sort of like wake up call, saying, hey, maybe it's time to put out some additional product and get the band back together, man.
Look at Guns N' Roses; they're still back out on tour, and I mean, I like to see them come out with a new album. I mean, as far as a music fan, I like them. I mean, wouldn't you? Honestly, I mean, look how long they've been around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think new music, it might not be the same as it was back in the day. I mean, for a number of reasons. But I think that if you're an artist and that's what you do is make music. I mean, you want to practice your art. You want to create art, and I don't see any reason why you should necessarily stop. If you love being an artist and you love music and you love creating music, then you should obviously continue doing that.
So the fall of 2018, Fifth Angel released their first new album in nearly 30 years, The Third Secret. How good did it feel at that time to get that out and see the fans' reaction? Man, 30 years, that's crazy to just imagine. It's 30 years we haven't put out an album.
Oh, I think it was 28 or something like that at the time, but long enough. Let's put it that way. So it was definitely kind of a surreal experience, I guess. We were very nervous about it because we knew that the first two albums were really considered classic albums in the European market. So, we did our best to try to make an album that we felt would certainly hold on to our older fans, and at the same time sort of move the band forward a little bit, maybe a little more progressive, maybe a little more aggressive, and try to make something that would sort of bridge that gap. And I think we were very successful in that. We had tremendous reviews on that album, and everybody seemed to love it. So, and the bottom line is that it still sounded like Fifth Angel, which was really amazing, when you think of how much time there was in between the album. So it sounded like Fifth Angel, but Fifth Angel that had moved forward a little bit. And so I think, we look back on that album, The Third Secret, as a success.
So let's talk about this. When you get labeled as these two albums are classics, I mean, is it going through your mind like, oh God, what do we do now? I mean, do you have to put that out of your mind and just create what you want to create?
Well, I tell you what, it took us a long time to actually write a record. I mean, we were working on it for years, and for whatever reason, the chemistry just wasn't working, and we were writing songs that were good songs, but they didn't sound like Fifth Angel. And we were like, well, this isn't going to work. It still needs to sound like Fifth Angel. When I started working with Kendall, and then we started working with John, there was this chemistry that really hadn't been explored before, and we were just coming up with music, and it was coming out easily and quickly, and it just sounded like Fifth Angel for the first time in many years. So, we just went with it and kept writing and banging songs out. And that Third Secret album was written very quickly. It actually, creativity is a different process. It's not like building a house where you can go, okay, we're going to lay the foundation, and then next Monday we're going to put down we're going to put the studs on, and then we're going to put the drywall up. It's nothing like that. You can't determine when you're going to be creative. You can't say, okay, tomorrow at 2:00 I'm going to write a great hit song and be creative. That's not the way it shows up. It shows up when it shows up. And fortunately for us, on that record, it showed up very quickly, and and I think was a very, very strong record.
How excited are you to have the fourth album, When Angels Kill, out now? And did the album turn out exactly the way you guys wanted it? Did it have that fifth angel stamp of approvals? Now that's our sound to go out.
I think it did. I mean, I think, obviously, I think with any recording, you're going to go back and you're going to pick it, nitpick it to death and go like, oh, I would have done this or I would have done that. And especially, in my case, I'm the producer and the engineer on it. So, I had to listen to these songs like 9 million times. So, I was there for every bit of it. So, from that perspective, are there things I'm relatively happy with it. I think I'm, I'd say probably 90, maybe 90, maybe a little more than 90% happy with it. It's a tough thing to say too, because, I think the album is a wonderful album. I guess when I'm listening though, I'm listening for things that the average person would never listen for. I'd be listening and I'd be going, okay, is the hi-hat loud enough in the mix? Is the, am I hearing enough of the bass guitar? Am I hearing this? Or, it's like I'm listening to it from a technical perspective sometimes. And for the first time, like I haven't listened to the album in a long time now, I'm going to go back and try and listen like a fan and just go, and just relax and listen to the songs. I'm looking forward to it. I have the LP, I have the double vinyl. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do it in 2 days because it's 70 minutes long, so I don't want to do it all in one sitting. But I'm going to close my eyes and see if I could see the movie and just listen to it and try and enjoy it like a fan for the first time. Probably the next week or so. So I'm looking forward to that.
Very, very old to you, but new to us, and probably just sick of like, I don't want to just get out of here. Let's just go. I'll take a break.
Well, it's funny. I know what you're saying. It's new to you guys because you haven't heard it. But yeah, for us in the band, we've heard it, countless times over and over. And here's the cool thing: like I still enjoy listening to the songs, which is very unusual. If I've been this involved in making a record, chances are I never want to hear it again when I'm done with it. And this one I actually don't mind hearing again. And there have been a few albums like that in my career where I can listen to them, I'd be intricately involved, and can still go back and appreciate and enjoy them. So, that is that's saying something I think very positive for this record.
I had seen where you had said that this is the most important album Fifth Angel has done to date. Why is it the most important one to date, possibly, in your own opinion?
Well, I think that because, we decided we noticed on Third Secret, we'd actually talked briefly around the time of the Third Secret about making a concept record, because we noticed that the first two albums had very similar themes and subject matters. And if you look back at those first two albums and even Third Secret, we're talking about things like deception in media, class warfare, regular warfare, terrorism, betrayal. We're talking about a lot of different things that if you go back over all those years, like some of those songs were written, almost, well, geez, I don't even want to say it. Like some of those songs were written almost 40 years ago. So, when you think about that and you go, we were very young and we were writing about these kinds of subjects. And so, it's really cool on the one hand that those subjects are extremely relevant today. And then at the same time, it's kind of sad that that's the case. We're always talking about the state of mankind, and it really hasn't changed much over the last 30 years. So, that's kind of a little bit of a negative. But as far as this album being important, we tried to really make something that would be exciting, especially for the Fifth Angel fans that have been there from the beginning. We tried to take all of the subject matter and we tried to weave them into a story, a cohesive story. And so and we put a lot of little Easter eggs in the album as well. We put in portions like little bits of song titles or lyrics that are referencing back to an earlier song. And so if you want to know more about the story, you can actually go back to the earlier albums and listen to those songs and kind of find out a little bit deeper meaning about what's happening in the story. So when I say the most important, I think this is the album that kind of wraps up all the previous three albums into one cohesive story. And from that perspective, I think it's probably an album that if you're a Fifth Angel fan, you kind of have to get this one.
So the band has 4 studio albums out. How special is it to have these 4 albums in the Fifth Angel music library and still be able to carry on with your music, man?
You know, it's sort of like where we all started when we were kids, you know, so it's kind of nice to go back and revisit, you know, what you were doing. And I think for us, I think it's important. I mean, I think it's important. It's really kind of a cool thing that this many years later, like if when we were recording that first album, if you would have said, hey, you know, 36 years later, you're going to be, you know, releasing another record and we're still going to be talking about those early records, I think we would have been surprised. I think we would have been like, wow, that's kind of cool. You know, nobody expects that. I mean, I think even the Beatles, when they interviewed the Beatles early on, they were like thinking, you know, our music will probably last 2 or 3 years and we'll be gone. You know, and here we are, you know, 60 years later talking about the Beatles. And so it's really kind of cool for us that, you know, people even care enough to talk about, you know, something we created that long ago. And, you know, it's just an honor. It's an honor that fans would want to listen to your music and care about it and be entertained by it and be interested in it. So, you know, that's the bottom line for us is, you know, it's just amazing that there are people that want to hear what we're doing. We're always honored and very appreciative of that.
But it shows you the staple of your music with Fifth Angel because it's good music, and that's why it's still a staple to this day. And, you know, and you know this as well as I do, bands are very lucky to have 1 album, maybe 2 albums, and then they're done just about. Sure. But to have it to be talked about still this day, man, that it takes something very special to linger on that long. Well,
thank you. Thank you for the kind words. And, you know, like I said, we don't take it lightly. You know, we really do appreciate our fan support. Like when we just played Kit Festival a couple months ago. And, you know, it was still amazing because, like you said, you know, it was sold out and everybody's singing the words to all of these songs. And we even did 2 of the new songs, which the people really didn't know, and they learned them and sang them, you know, right at the show. And, you know, that was an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing to hear thousands of people singing along with your songs, you know, where it's loud enough over a metal concert where you can actually hear them singing. I mean, that's how loud it was. So for us, you know, again, we're just totally honored by that. And you know, we can't say enough about the fans.
Man, I've always said you go overseas and I don't care what band you are. You've got a following over there. I don't care who you are. You go overseas, you play, man, and when you strike a chord, that's it. You just have to play the music and don't sing. Everybody else will sing it for you. They're there to do it.
Well, I think the fans are maybe a little more loyal in Europe too. Like I think that if they like what you're doing, they tend to follow you and stay with you, as opposed to, I think, fans in the United States are maybe a little more fickle, where, you know, whatever the flavor of the month is, you know, they're probably going to go and check that out and, you know, maybe forget some of the other stuff that they liked. I think European fans tend to stick with their bands a little bit more.
Do you feel this band should have more albums out at this time, or no, or are you just right on path?
Well, obviously we should have more records out. I think we've averaged like 1 album every 10 years if you average it out. So yes, we should have more albums out. But at the same time, I think, you know, if you're proud of your body of work and if you've really tried to do it with excellence, then, you know, maybe it doesn't matter as much.
Did the band add anything differently on this album musically than what fans are accustomed to, Ken?
I think so. If you're a fan of the original albums, you know, and this is the tough thing for us, you know, it's tough to compete with nostalgia. And I think just like, you know, for instance, I'll say from my own perspective, you know, I grew up, I was a huge Rush fan, and, you know, the albums that I tend to really love from Rush are the albums that I first started listening to them on, like Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures. And, you know, those are still my favorite albums. And it's because, you know, there's a nostalgia attached to that music. And so I think with our albums, you know, if somebody loved us from the 80s, it's going to be a little bit of a, you know, something where they have to adjust a little bit with us and go like, okay, these guys are older, they've grown, they're a lot better players. You know, the music has gotten maybe a little more progressive and maybe a little more aggressive. And, can you grow with it? I mean, the one thing we tried to keep consistent was we always tried to put in choruses that people can really hook onto and walk away singing. We tried to keep that no matter how heavy it is or no matter how aggressive or progressive it is. We always try to make sure the choruses are there. And so hopefully, that'll allow those, Fifth Angel fans to move along through time with us.
Do you feel the new album had to come out swinging for this band or no?
Well, we definitely feel like it had to come out and make a statement. And that's why I think When Angels Kill was really kind of the perfect lead-off track, because it does come out swinging. It's very aggressive. It's very progressive. I mean, it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the album. I mean, I think that there's some songs that are lighter, and I think that there's songs that are heavier. But I think it's a real good place to start that record. So, yeah, I do think it was very important.
What led the track When Angels Kill to be the first song released off this album? What was it about that you guys said, hey, let's put this out first?
Well, I think there was a couple things. I mean, it was one of the first songs that we wrote for this record. And I think it was, it's kind of sets the tone. It's opened up with an intro called Descent into Darkness. And this is really kind of probably the darkest of all the 4 Fifth Angel records. I mean, it's if anyone's heard the story, it's not necessarily a happy story. I mean, it's a pretty dark album overall, and there's a lot of tragedy that happens within the album on a personal level and a global level. So I do think it was like a type of song that would kind of introduce the person into the mood of the record, and then kind of take them from there. I mean, there's definitely things that, like Immortal, that's a song of victory. It's like, hey, well, actually in the story, Immortal is actually a song that happens after the tyrant has killed a bunch of his political enemies and a bunch of resistors. So this is a song basically saying, hey, we're still going to fight. We don't care. We die. We'll come back again. We will not be subjugated. So it's a song of, I mean, I won't necessarily call it victory, but it's definitely a song of hope and a song of like, that we're going to fight this. And then of course, as the record goes on, the fight obviously becomes much more difficult. So, but all that to say that, as far as the track, I think it's a real good introduction to the album.
And Phoenix was on a fight from the get-go on this, man. Phoenix had to battle. So
he does indeed. Yep. He has a fight on his hands. Yeah, resistance, what's that thing in Star Trek? Resistance is futile. In this is more like resistance is fatal.
Yeah. So was this a planned double concept album, or did it just fall into place?
Well, it definitely was planned. Once we had When Angels Kill was one of the first songs that popped out, and The End of Everything was one of the first songs that popped out. Those were I think maybe the 2 first songs that we had. And there was a synopsis. So there was sort of like a treatment like they did for The Wall. I think The Wall had like a 40-page treatment. I don't know what they did for like Operation Mindcrime or Keeper of the Seven Keys, but we had a treatment for this, I guess, if for lack of a better term, like almost like a movie treatment. And it was a couple pages long, and it had the whole story. And we were, sent it between the band and everything. And kind of a funny offshoot to this was that, when John Macko, our bass player, got it, he looked at it and he thought it was so complex. He said, do you have any other ideas? This seems like it'd be really hard to get across. But, fortunately, we just started making the record, and we started kind of filling in the gaps of the songs that were needed. And I think it worked out, really well.
Was there a track for the album that totally ended up sounding different than what it was intended to when it's first brought to the table?
That's a really good question. I don't believe so. I mean, I think that the songs, I think some songs turned out much better than we anticipated. I think one of the 2 of those would probably be Ashes to Ashes and Kill the Pain. We weren't really sure how those were going to turn out, and those actually turned out very nicely. So I think the answer to that is, maybe a little bit. I mean, some of the songs, I say most everything turned out how we had anticipated, and some things turned out a little bit better than we anticipated.
Look, I know these are your guys' baby songs. I understand that. But are there any tracks standing out more to you than any right now on the album? I
do love, everything that we've released as singles as far as this to date anyways, When Angels Kill and Resist the Tyrant, and also We Are Immortal. I mean, I think all those are killer tracks, but I really enjoy The End of Everything. It's a very moody piece. It's a very heartfelt piece. I also enjoy Kill the Pain. Ashes to Ashes is another very, I tend to probably lean a little bit more towards the moody kind of songs myself. And those have like a little bit of a moodier feel because they're headed towards the end of the record and the end of Phoenix. And so, they have a certain tone to them and a certain mood that I tend to enjoy in listening to music.
I know this is a concept album, but are there any songs that did not make this album we're going to see on another album, EP, or just a standalone single down the road, maybe?
Well, there was one song that didn't make it, and there really wasn't a place for it. It was kind of it was more traditional, like it sounded like something maybe off the first album or maybe the second album, and it just didn't seem to fit musically, and we were able to tell the story without it. I'm not sure if we'll see it in the future or not. I mean, but yeah, there is one track that's sitting there, and I don't like I said, I don't know if we'll use it in the future. I would probably anticipate we might not, but you never know.
Yeah. Is the track listing placement important for Fifth Angel's albums or EPs that you guys put out? Is that track listing important or no?
I think for us, it is. I think when we put a record together, we do have the listener in mind. And, the thing is most people don't listen to an album the way they used to back in the day. Most people back in the day would start at the beginning and they just listen to the whole record. Now, today, I'm not sure how many people do that or if we really expect people to do that. But in the event that they do that,
yeah.
we do try to put everything in an order that's very enjoyable from that perspective. Like, it starts in a certain way and it ends in a certain way. And so we do try to put that into the equation.
All right, Ken, what's the growth musically you've seen from yourselves working on this concept album that impresses you the most still moving forward with Fifth Angel?
Well, I just think that, we have an exceptional group of talented people, and they're very, I think, flexible in terms of ideas. Like, nobody's super dogmatic about what they want to do. I think everybody works well together. So I think that that's really kind of, if you're looking for sort of the, what's the magic ingredient, I think that's kind of what it is in this case. I think you just have a, super group of talented players and writers, and, everybody works, the chemistry works. And, that's I think that's why the record is what it is. And I think we're all very personally proud of the record. And it's weird, I think in this day of social media, we've had tremendous, awesome feedback. This is record of the year. This is incredible. We love this album. And, then you always have a few haters. Fortunately, there's been very few of those, but you do have your haters too. And one person saying, obviously, somebody likes new metal and they don't like melodic rock, melodic metal, this isn't going to be their thing. This is power metal. If you're not into it and you don't want to hear melodies and you don't want to hear, really beautiful, orchestrated guitar solos and orchestration and all this stuff, if you don't want to hear it, don't listen to Fifth Angel. It's like, if you love those things, then you're going to love this record. So, but I'm always surprised by the haters that feel like they have to say something when this isn't their cup of tea. It's like, where do these people come from? It's just like I would never think of going to some band. Like, let's say there's a band and I don't like their music. I would never go to their social media page and start writing things about how much I hate their music. Like, it just would never, it would never occur to me to do that. So I'm always surprised by those people.
I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I understand it completely, but then there's others that I don't like. I mean, I'm just not going to go to the page. Just move on. Just go.
No. Well, here's the funny thing. Okay, you don't like it. I don't know. Maybe don't listen to it.
There you go. Common sense.
Here's a plan. Don't actually listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, just because you see a post and you need you feel that you need to put a comment on it, just move on. It's not about you. Just go. You're not in that. So So you produced this album, man. Let's talk about that. Do you like being the producer and having that control to do what you guys want to do and have the time to do it?
That's a great question. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it's, I enjoy production. I've been a producer for about 30 years, and I do enjoy producing. At the same time, it's always a challenge when you have a group of 5 or more people in this case that all have opinions and all have thoughts. Fortunately, the guys are, like I said, very flexible, but I think it does present a certain challenge because you're trying to make a great product. Obviously, you want to make a great album and what you think is a great album. And that may differ it from time to time from some of the opinions of the other members. So I think it's a dual-edged sword. I mean, I certainly enjoy production and I enjoy producing, but you're always trying to keep your bandmates happy. And there's a lot of producers that don't think that way. I mean, I've certainly worked with some of the greatest producers in the world, guys like Michael Wagner, who produced Megadeth and Metallica and Ozzy Osbourne and Janet Jackson, and the list goes on. He sold 60 million albums. Guys like Andy Johns, who, a couple small bands like Led Zeppelin and Van Halen. And, these are just 2. Mac, who produced Queen. And, the list goes on. I've worked with like tons and tons of producers. Terry Brown, who produced the Rush albums, at least the ones that I love the most. And so, having that experience, having worked with some of these producers, a lot of them are very heavy-handed where, if they don't care what the artist thinks, they're just going to do what they want to do. And I think differently because I think as a producer, you're going to move on and you're going to produce the next album that you're going to produce. But the artist is stuck with that album forever. So I always try to be very sensitive to the artist and what they like and what they think. So in this case, it was a little different because obviously these are my bandmates and friends, and you always want to put their feelings and concerns front and foremost. And so I would say I enjoy it, but in this case it was maybe a little more stress than it would normally be in a normal production.
We're going to throw Fifth Angel out the window right now. We're going to just focus mainly on Ken Mary and what you like. It's all about you on the.
Okay.
So if you could write an album equivalent to your favorite band's album, which album would that be?
Wow, it's really tough because if I was to write an album, I would want it to be like of all of my favorite songs of all time, and it would take I would be deriving from a lot of different sources. So it's kind of tough to say what that album would be. And it might not always include metal bands. I mean, that's the thing that's weird too, because I really do enjoy a lot of other types of music as well. But that's a tough question. I'm not sure I could really answer that fairly. You know what I'm saying? Like answer it without giving you like 20 songs that are my favorite songs of all time. And I almost don't want to reveal those for all your metal fans that would hate me for the non-metal songs that would be on there.
All right, man, we know you've had a huge career with playing with other bands, everything like that. But what's been your most memorable show that you've been a part of that you still can't believe to this day that you actually was a part of?
Well, for me, nostalgia, talking about nostalgia, I think, my first major event was touring with Alice Cooper and playing a Halloween night concert in Detroit at a sold-out 22,000-seat Joe Louis Arena. And the biggest place I had played before that was probably 5,000 people. And all of a sudden, here we are, we're live on MTV in front of 20 million people because MTV was the big deal back in that day.
Yep.
And there's 22,000 people sold out in this massive Coliseum. And, the lights go down and it's just, wow, just the crowd just going nuts. And, I was very young and it was my first major tour. And, I'm just like a pig in slop. I am like, yeah, like we're, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. And I'm just going to be totally honest here. I played bigger shows and things and obviously things where, it's your own band or whatever. And so you may perceive it as to be more important, but that was the most fun I think I ever have had in my entire life was that concert. And if you look at footage of it, the crowd is literally out of their minds, going insane for the entire show. Like you never see a crowd like that ever. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a crowd go that nuts ever. So in terms of like, if I had to pick one moment in time that was the absolute most fun for me, that was it right there, man.
And think about it, folks. If you don't like dive into music as much as I do, I mean, I dive into to know where they come from, how it got started. When Alice Cooper started, man, there was times where it didn't look like it was going nowhere. It looked like it was going to be over and done soon. But all of a sudden, man, it just like kicked off like a few other bands.
Well, those tours that we did, those were his big comeback tours. He had been clean at that point for, I think, like 7 or 8 years. And to be honest with you, that was the first tour that he had done sober, I believe, is what we were told. Oh, wow. So he was nervous too. Like he was actually, he was concerned, because he had never, performed without, being under some sort of influence. And he kicked butt, man. I mean, he just crushed it, and it was powerful, and it was aggressive, and it was angry, and it was, it was really cool. I mean, you look back on that day and that footage, and it's just, I mean, that was the perfect thing at the perfect time. And that's one of the events. I mean, there's been many events in my life I will never forget, but I think in terms of if somebody said what was the most fun ever, and I think just because I was young and it was the first time I'd ever played an event that size, and I was so ready for it and so wanting to be there that that was awesome.
Okay, I got to know this too, just to you specifically. If you could be a member in an iconic band and play one of their legendary shows, Ken, which band and what show would that be?
Wow,
I know you've done a lot of stuff, man, a lot of cool stuff, but you personally, like, whatever,
Well, here's the funny story. Led Zeppelin was a little bit before my time, but my 3 favorite drummers, that I try to be like an amalgamation of, are Neil Peart, Buddy Rich, and John Bonham. So I'd say if I could go, I mean, if you look at Zeppelin in the 70s, and you go, because I didn't really know that much about them, and I really discovered them in the late 80s when I was touring with House of Lords, and I bought I'll try and keep the story brief, but I had just purchased a portable CD player that I was taking with me on tour. And so I went and bought, albums like, the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's, which was a seminal record for production. Like I was trying to, learn. I was trying to learn, some great things about music history. And I bought like Led Zeppelin 4, and I bought, a bunch of other albums. I mean, I had this whole stack of CDs, and most of them were classic albums. And I was putting in Led Zeppelin 4, and I'm on the plane, and I'm hearing like, Misty Mountain Hop, and, when the levee breaks, and, all this stuff. And I'm just, my band guys, I'm going, dude, you guys have to listen to this. This is unbelievable. Have you guys heard this stuff? And they're like, oh, you just figured out who Led Zeppelin is, huh? And I was like, yeah, I guess I did, because they all grew up with Led Zeppelin. But I was like, man, this is amazing. You guys got to check this out. This is incredible, and they're just laughing at me, like, oh, you just figured out who Zeppelin is, huh? So I'd say if I had one concert, I think they did the Silver Dome in Detroit, and it was like 80,000 people or something insane like that. Like you see the pictures of it, then it looks like it just would have been, an insane concert to be on stage with. So I'd say I maybe would pick that.
Do you like going and diving back to see the origin of the bands that you like, and see how they came up, and what band member came in and what band member left, and you're like, oh, this band member formed this band, and then they're like, oh my God, it's just like a train reaction of everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly, I think in this day and age, there's probably a little more in terms of members changing than probably in the past.
Yeah.
Just because, I think for a number of reasons. I mean, let's face it, a lot of the bands that are out there that are iconic even, like we're all getting older, everybody's getting older. And so, sometimes you have tours where this member can't make it or this member's injured or, just like on making this record, we had Steve Conley step in when Ed Archer hurt his hand. And, sometimes you have to do what you have to do to move the ball forward. But, I think it's a different day and age as far as art, watching artists. I mean, I think it's really interesting that, like when I was a kid growing up, Kiss was one of my favorite bands and Aerosmith was one of my favorite bands. And it was interesting to me, they had some member changes and, somehow Kiss survived it, but Aerosmith did not. Aerosmith, for whatever reason, that chemistry that they had with those original members, they were kind of, pretty much gone until 1980. What was the name of that record? It had all the big hits from that era. I can't remember the name of the record right now, but anyway, they were pretty much gone until they got the original members back together again, and then they had that same chemistry, and they put out like an incredible record. And I think there is something to chemistry. I think that on every record, that chemistry has to be there. I think fortunately for us, we've seen some changes and we've seen some member changes. And I think at the end of the day, we've always had just incredible musicians. Like if you look at the people that have played guitar in this band, we feel like, we catch lightning in a bottle every time. You look at Jim Dofka on this record, you look at James Bird, you look at Kendall Bechtel, you look at Ethan Brosh, fabulous player. Like we've worked with so many amazing players that, you don't want to take it for granted, I guess. but really, I think that's been the key for us is, there have been changes, but I think we always try to make sure that the changes is, if we're having to, put somebody in on the team, try and make sure they're super talented.
All right, folks, Fifth Angel has released their fourth album entitled When Angels Kill via Nuclear Blast Records. And this is a double concept album, so please pick this up, check out their singles. Just give this band a fair shot, and I guarantee you will like them. Trust me. And Ken, how could folks stay in touch with Fifth Angel, buy this new concept album, everything under the sun for Fifth Angel? How can you do that, sir?
Well, certainly on Facebook, just hit Fifth Angel. We have our website, Fifth Angel. Obviously, we're on Instagram. Nuclear Blast is the label, of course. So if they need to order anything, you can go there, or Amazon in the United States has everything. I think they might be sold out of the vinyl, unfortunately, last time I checked, but that's actually probably a good thing. But I know that Europe, they still have vinyl in Europe. Unfortunately, the shipping is very expensive if you're going to do that. But also, I think I'll leave you with this thought that, when you do listen to the record, it's very long. It's 70 minutes. So, just divide it into two listens, listen to side 1 and side 2, and then the next day come back and listen to 3 and 4. And I think it's just a lot to digest if you're going to try and do it all in one listen.
Yeah, it's like a movie, part 1, part 2. There you go. Break it down. Break it down. Ken, before I let you go, sir, would you care to do a promo for my show?
Absolutely. Hi, this is Ken Mary from Fifth Angel, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour. Check it out.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour. Please get out and check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link and our YouTube link that you definitely want to go subscribe to if you like what I'm doing, and I hope you guys and gals do. Check out Fifth Angel, their new album entitled When Angels Kill via Nuclear Blast Records. Get out and grab it, and check out singles When Angels Kill and We Are Immortal. And Ken, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. And like I've always said, man, got another icon on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, my friend, and you have an excellent rest of your day.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.